So you guys voted for the top 10 PS5 games to be the final topic of the show to close off the show today, and we are going to dive into it. Like I said earlier in the show, I think we'll definitely have to do an updated list in 2024, pretty early in 2024, because it seems like 2023 we're really just starting to get like the big next gen only titles. So I'm curious to see how different this list will be in like January of 2024. But let's go ahead and kick it off with number 10, Sifu. Absolutely a dream, mixed martial arts kung fu inspired title. This love letter to classic, karate kung fu movies, and man, the loop of Sifu is really the most addictive and rewarding part of trying to get out of each level at a younger age. Each time as you're running through it, you're like, well, damn, I know I died 3 times there, but I think I can do it. I think I can do it without dying this next time, now that I know exactly the right times to parry, now that I know exactly the right times to jump, and to, like, you just start learning these little things, these little details that allow you to get through each stage at a quicker rate. The iconic interior design of these levels, they're so memorable, ingrained in your head. The club section, so fucking iconic. The final boss battle, the challenge with that final boss battle, like I think I can't, I'm not 100% sure, but I think you can only get to like 65 before you have to restart. And I was like right there. I could only die like one more time, and I finally got through it. Just on the brink of death, my health dwindling down, finally got through it. It's just that sigh of relief. But it's not, I don't like, overly challenging games. I'm not a Souls guy. I'm not really into that stuff. But the action, the frenetic combat, the fast pace of Sifu, and just, there was something about, it's not a 30-hour game. You can get through it in 10 hours. It's just about practicing and becoming proficient within those 10 hours of this loop. And I don't know. I found it a lot more palatable to me. So number 10, Sifu. Number 9, The Forgotten City. We talked about this last week in my most underrated games of all time. I fucking love The Forgotten City. I absolutely love this missing person mystery, time looping, epic journey that you go on, epic adventure, epic narrative, and the townspeople are all so important. It's visually pretty striking for an indie game, and like a legit indie game, super small team, and they pulled off something absolutely magical with The Forgotten City. It's a game that really rewards you for deep diving and trying to uncover as much detail about what is going on in this town as humanly possible. Tons of twists and turns and epic arcs for these characters. Great game with The Forgotten City. Number 8, Resident Evil 8. I just thought this was, in my opinion, such a step forward from RE7, especially in terms of enemy encounter and the enemy design that you run up against. I just loved the enemies in Resident Evil 8. Some really solid boss battles as well. Obviously the iconic characters like Lady Dimitrescu, and the Resident Evil 4 influence there with the setting and sort of the tone of RE8. And yeah, I'm not totally into the winners stuff that they had going on. I'm glad we're moving on from that, but I just thought that it was such a solid first-person shooter with some really tense moments, some good horror, specifically with one very specific section of that game that really elevates the horror more than I would say most Resident Evil games ever have. So yeah, Resident Evil 8 is going to come in at number 8 for me. One of my favorite Resident Evil games ever. Number 7, Dead Space, the remake that came out this year. Got a remake from old 2008, I believe. And it's a incredible remake. It's very true to the original, so it's one that I don't necessarily like, I understand why people might have been a little bit hesitant to pay the $70 for this remake. I get that, but it's one worth experiencing. There are real improvements here with the zero gravity section and shit like that. And just visually, the graphical fidelity on offer with Dead Space, it truly utilizes next gen hardware better than most games on the market right now. With it being exclusive to next gen systems, like you can't play this on a PS4 and Xbox One. And out of everything we've talked about so far, I believe it's the only game, I think Sifu, if I'm not mistaken, is available on last gen systems. So it's the only game we've talked about so far that is an exclusively next gen title, and you 100% feel that next gen technology when you're playing Dead Space. It is a marvel to look at, and it's a technical powerhouse for sure. Number 6, Hogwarts Legacy. My I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, my second favorite game of 2023. And this is just an excellent open world game. Even if you're not a fan of Harry Potter or Hogwarts, if you have no investment in that universe, which I do not, I still think you can get so much out of this experience. It is a magical world to be a part of, and I like getting into it really made me understand why people could get so enamored and hooked into the wizarding world. You know, the Hogsmeade, going off and exploring Hogsmeade, going off and just seeing these different settings. And, you know, even the fucking castle is so rich and full of detail. And I can't imagine how that must have felt for someone who was a legit Harry Potter fan to go in and be like, oh my God, I remember that detail and that detail. And oh shit, this little thing over here that's hidden, you know, I remember that from this specific movie, or whatever the case may be. Like, it was just, I can imagine people who really had that investment got so much out of this game. But even for someone who doesn't have that investment, there's a lot here just in terms of being a legitimately good open world third person action adventure game. It gives you a ton on offer there. A bunch of different spells that you're able to cast that add great variety to the combat. A pretty solid narrative with legitimately 2 great side quests. And yeah, I enjoyed the shit out of my time with Hogwarts Legacy. It's coming in at number 6. Number 5, Evil West. Once again, we talked about this on the most underrated games list last week. I adore Evil West. I absolutely adore this game. It is a brutal gore fest, just an absolute love letter to the 6th and 7th generation style of linear third person games that don't pad content that's unnecessary. It's straight giving you the bulk, giving you the good shit, giving you the stuff you want, and allowing you to just slaughter foes in the most gruesome fashion possible. So goddamn fun. And yeah, it's coming in at number 5 for me. Really, we talked about it last week, so I'm not going to expand too much, but a surprisingly solid narrative and presented really well with solid cinematics, and it once again inspired by your God of War and your Gears of War, and then giving you melee action alongside your long range and your firearm action, and combining those two with a bunch of magical powers and shit going on. Like, it is very much similar to games of yesteryear and inspired by those games, but still I feel like it cuts out a lot of the padding even from some of those games. It's really straight to the point and just constantly fun. You're never not having a blast with Evil West. Number 4, Lost Judgment. This I never played the Yakuza games. Judgment in 2019 was my first like Yakuza spin-off title, and the Yagami Detective Agency, and I just really got into what they were doing with the narrative. I really liked the characters, I liked the world, and the mini games on offer, and just the little side activities that you could go and do. You know, in Lost Judgment, you have essentially a whole sub-quest, like spanning multiple different storylines, that it's just the inclusion of mini games. You go off and join a boxing club. You go off and join a fucking biker gang. And these mini games are, could be, you know, like, no disrespect, but there was a Rocky or a Creed game that came out like last year or the year before, Lost Judgment's boxing minigame that is just a small piece of that game is just as in depth as the full Creed boxing game that was released. So there's so much in that game to go and do. They have the little fucking what is it, like the little mechs that you're controlling and trying to take over a board, almost similar to something like the pogo stick game on Crash Bash. And you going off to the Sega arcades and going off to the batting cages and playing some Top Golf. Like, so much to do in these games, and that's once again only the side shit. You're talking about a pretty gripping, solid main narrative as well to go and explore. And they expanded with different fighting styles and allowing for more defensive maneuvers in Lost Judgment, opposed to the original game in 2019 that pretty much just offered you up some pretty standard brawler combat. So Lost Judgment, number 4, absolutely fucking love it. Number 3, Plague Tale Requiem. The best narrative of the generation, hands down, in my opinion, that I've experienced. Nothing even comes close. Best ending to any game of the last probably 10 years for me, or somewhere in that range at least. I adore this narrative. I think it tops the first game in every aspect. It is a little bit more action focused. You don't have to rely on stealth as much. I love the upgrade system. Some of you voted, I think it was in second place if I'm not mistaken, my favorite unusual mechanics in video games. And I gotta say, one here, it's not necessarily a mechanic, but it's a upgrade implementation, is the way that A Plague Tale Requiem, the upgrade system pretty much solely relies on how you play the game, and it upgrades your character naturally based off of what you do. So if you want something to be upgraded in that chart, you need to play the game appropriately. So if you play more aggressively, your aggressive attributes will increase. If you play more stealthily, your stealth attributes will increase. So it's taking from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which I'm sure there's other games that have done it too, but Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, when you're running around, as CJ, you're constantly upgrading your stamina. When you're lifting weights, you're upgrading your strength. When you're going out and eating too much damn Cluckin' Bell, you're getting fat. Like, I loved that system. I loved that upgrade system of just naturally applying the upgrades based off of what you were doing in the game. And Plague Tale Requiem does that in a game that really wouldn't have to do something that robust and that detailed. It's a smaller scale, which I'm sure they got some decent funding from the Game Pass Day One thing. But that is a studio. Sobo is a studio that I'm blown away by the fact that they got out Requiem in 2022. Plague Tale Innocence released in 2019. A quick turnaround there, and an epic scale for Requiem. Just they scaled tremendously, where that is one of the most impressive visual showpieces on the market. Plague Tale Requiem, it really is, and it comes from a studio that is definitely not AAA. I would say maybe leaning towards high AA-ish at this point, but definitely not AAA, regardless of what funding they got from Microsoft. But hit it out of the park with Plague Tale Requiem. Number 2, Resident Evil 4, the remake. I really debated very, very hard on if this was my game of the generation or not. I debated very hard, and I don't know if it's just the remake thing that prevented me from putting it at 1. I don't know. I'm still like debating in live time if this should be number 1 or not. But RE4 remake, what is there that needs to be said that hasn't been said a million times already? It is maybe my favorite remake of all time. It's not as necessary of a remake as something like RE2 or something like Final Fantasy VII, but it's a pretty fucking necessary remake. The improvements of the moving and shooting, the parry systems, the swapping to the different weapons with the D-pad, the story, the new context for the story with won't spoil anything, but a big twist there at the end. adding more screen time for important characters, getting a little bit more lore on the villagers, on Mendez, on Sadler, on Salazar, knowing more about these characters in an in-depth manner. Like, yeah, it was a very I would say a much more needed remake than I expected when they first announced that this was the direction Capcom was going in. I was like, I would have rather seen Code Veronica. I would have rather seen Outbreak. I would have rather seen like a lot of different things for Capcom to remake opposed to RE4. But now after playing it, I was like, oh yeah, this is very much needed. And I went back and played the original a little bit, and it's far and away, in my opinion, RE4 Remake is now the definitive way to play that game. But number one, closing off the list here, Horizon Forbidden West. I got to give it to it. It's tough. This is a toss-up between 2 and 1. It really, really is. I would say just in terms of the wow factor and now adding in Burning Shores to that, you kind of got to compare them, or kind of got to consider them as a part of one package, with Burning Shores being a direct continuation off of the back of Forbidden West, following directly after that story. Technically, Burning Shores and Forbidden West, I would say that's the real showpiece of the PS5, both of those games. Shout out to Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart too. I think that would be somewhere around that like 15, 11 to 15 range. And in terms of a graphical powerhouse, a technical powerhouse, fucking Ratchet and Clank is up there as well. Miles Morales is up there as well. Insomniac has been absolutely crushing it this generation. But I think for me, for the style of game I like, and also I think Miles Morales would definitely be on this list, but I played it on PS4 initially, so that is worth, considering. And you have the Ghost of Tsushima's and the director's cut, the fucking, well, there was another one. Ghost of Tsushima had a Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. Like, those would be on here, but I played those on PS4. You know what I mean? These are all games that the first time I played them on a PS5, so there's that to add in as well. But Forbidden West, I was hooked by the gameplay. Absolutely, totally hooked by the gameplay. The narrative actually disappointed me a little bit. It's still really, really good, and very shocking, unexpected twists that literally take the game to a totally different genre. And then the future of Horizon is very up in the air, and then I'm so curious how they proceed with it. But Burning Shores kind of got me back on track to where I'm thinking, yeah, I might be totally down for where they go with this narrative, because I thought that they like I said, the small scale, more cultist style plot line that they threw out there, like I was really into that, even though it was, jumping off of the back of where Forbidden West went narratively. But you're talking about your flying mounts flying through the skies, soaring above the skies, and then in Burning Shores getting your mount diving deep into the ocean, taking it. There's just so much going on, incredible climbing mechanics and great puzzle solving, and just excellent variety to the combat system with tons of different weapons, incredible mechanical complexity to the moment-to-moment gameplay, and just visually one of one. There's no character models in gaming that look like that. There's no character models that look anything close to that, in my opinion. You have some Plato Requiem is up there. I shouldn't say anything close to that. There are some somewhat close, but what Guerrilla did is one of one, in my opinion, in terms of the just technical wow factor for Forbidden West, and especially for fucking Burning Shores. So that's going to be my number one PlayStation 5 game. That's my top 10 list there to close off the show